This is Callie Wickham, and I'm here with my best friend Tammy Douglas, and we're both in education. And as you can tell, it's also winter because we have on our scarves, which means that we're right in the middle of dealing with students because it's the middle of the school year. And I asked Tammy if she would talk to us today about a couple of things that concern school and parents. So the first thing I want to know, Tammy, is how do you not become that parent, the one that drives you crazy as the teacher in the classroom? And I want you to be thinking about how you can advocate for your student in a positive way.
Okay. How do you? The worst parents are the ones who walk into your classroom, or their first assumption is that it's got to be an adversarial relationship with you.
Right,
And so, what I'd love to tell every parent is just remember that we're in it together.
right,
We both want what's best for your child, and I think the best thing they could do is when they first communicate with the teacher is to just ask, what do you think, or what have you been observing about my child, and what information can you give me to help my child either do better in your class or be a better student or a better person, as opposed to, we have a problem, I don't like this, my child, that's just the worst way to
they
get
usually
approached.
ask if their kid can get out of your classroom. How can I switch my kid from your classroom?
Yeah, what I find is if you have any type of rigor in your teaching, and if a child's never experienced it before, or if everything's been very easy for their child, then their first response is to one, blame you. There's something wrong with you in the way that you're teaching, and then the second response is to flee if they can't get you to just give their child the grade that they think they should have,
Right.
as opposed to earning.
Right. So can you tell our listeners out there about a good experience with a parent that you've had?
Oh yeah, I've had plenty. I mean, it's easy to remember the bad ones, but I've had plenty. I think one example would be a parent who she just said, my child's not getting it, and can you maybe give me examples of where she's falling short? And so I would explain to her, like when her child would answer a question, she wasn't good on supporting evidence, and so therefore she would get partial credit instead of full credit. And this parent stayed in contact with me all year, but I didn't mind. It wasn't like, oh, not her again. I mean, because she really, she would look at the homework and say, okay, I looked at her homework and I see what she got wrong. And we talked about, I sat down with my daughter, I talked to her about,
Right.
you see where you didn't get these points. But I mean, it was whatever we were covering. She came back with more questions, just, could you explain this to me? She's like, I'm sure you discussed it with my daughter, but teenagers, I don't always get the full story. And
Right.
that was good. I don't mind having that conversation every day with parents.
Right. As educators, we just feel like we get so much blame all the time when the kids
Yeah.
aren't doing well, and really we're there to help and to offer some assistance, and it doesn't always turn out that way. So,
No, I think one thing that parents should always remember too is that learning is a growth process, and
they're not
some
expected
kids
to be
don't
perfect.
get it. No, we don't expect them
Right.
to be perfect. I mean, when a child just does well from beginning to end, you go, "Whew, that's an exceptional child." But most children, it's a learning process, and it takes time, and they need to measure each improvement as success. It's maybe not be a large jump,
Right.
but learning shouldn't be a jump. It's a process,
Right.
step by step by step.
I think the other thing is, as long as parents don't expect students to get straight A's the entire time that they're in school, I think that that can be a very damaging thing because they don't see it as a process. Well, you might be getting a C as a grade right now, but the whole experience here is, what have you mastered? What are we working on? And once we get to the end, what I expect you to have filled in the gaps for by then.
Right. And I've had students say, I got a C, and that was the hardest C I ever worked for, and they were proud of that, and
Right.
that's what I said you should be.
Right.
You worked very hard for that C. Not an A isn't always a measurement of what your child's capable of. I mean,
Amen.
and so when students get straight A's the whole time, it makes you wonder how they're going to cope when they get out in the real world and they don't get the A.
Right.
Well,
When
they
they're
don't know
not
how to do it.
successful,
Right.
they're going to crumble, and we're not going to have mom and dad there to come and call your boss and say, I think you're taking it too hard on him. I
Exactly.
think you need to be a little bit nicer.
Yeah, don't be the helicopter parent. I mean, their whole lives you're setting your child up to be dependent and not to be independent. So.
Right, right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
you're welcome.
And that's it for us from Back Talk Blog Her. We thank you for your time, Tammy.
Oh, jeez. Gosh. Your mama is so pretty on camera.